Hello and welcome to another episode of Daily Reflections. Pastor Sean coming to you from my back porch here. We've got the blinds down, and so if I lean back here too far, you can't see me. I get into the light, and so we have one blind behind me and one over here on the side, and it is a beautiful, beautiful, glorious day. Man, the sun is shining. I think it got up to about 82, 83 degrees today, and it has just been a gorgeous, gorgeous day. I hope you were able to get out and stretch your legs a little bit, maybe walk around your neighborhood or walk around your yard or walk to the mailbox and back or even, get out and go visit a few places. We've been on the road most of the day today. As you may have saw my Facebook post from earlier, Shelby purchased a car today. She bought her first car today. And so we've spent most of the day with banks and insurance companies and car dealerships getting all of that worked out. And I was the Lord brought back to my memory a couple of scriptures that I really like. The Bible first says, Jesus says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. And then in the book of Proverbs, it says, blessed is the man who has a quiver full of arrows. And he's talking about his children and his grandchildren. Blessed is the man who has a quiver full of arrows. And I got to thinking about those two verses, and I got to thinking about the generation that is following us. I got to thinking about our kids and our grandkids. And it came to me very quickly. The Lord spoke to me and said, I didn't raise you, talking to me, I didn't treat you at arm's length. I treated you with open arms. And that's how you treat the next generation. And so I got to thinking about that, and I got to thinking about the way that we raised our children. And as the Lord was speaking to me as I was thinking on those verses, I got to thinking about the way that we raised Zach and Shelby and Laurel. And we always had an open arm policy with them. We always loved our children. We chastened them, we disciplined them. There was no doubt about that. But we always showed our kids a whole lot of love. If they had an interest in something, we let them go for it. Shelby ran cross country. They both played soccer. Zach played football and baseball. Shelby played a little t-ball. Shelby was in cheerleading and all these different things. Whatever they showed an interest in, buddy, we let them have at it. Now, we didn't have a whole lot of money, but we did what we could, and we made sure that our children knew that there were no limits on who they could be. There was no limits on what they could do. There was no limits on what they could accomplish, and we treated our children with a very open arm policy. Now, I'm not telling you how to raise your kids. That's not what I'm saying. I'm telling you what worked for us. We raised our children with a very open arm policy, and we told our kids every day, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day that we loved them. And we held them in our arms when the little boy broke up with Shelby and she'd cry, Stephanie would hold her and cry with her. When a little girl would break up with Zach and he'd get mad and he'd be tore up about it, and he and I would sit down and have a conversation about it. And then they both grew up. They both grew up and they became productive members of society. All three of them. Let me back up. All three of them. I don't want to leave Laurel out. All three of them grew up to be productive members of society. Laurel and Kenneth live in Rocky Face. They have 2 children together, and they own their own home. They have great jobs. They're wonderful people. I tell Kenneth all the time he's my favorite son-in-law. Of course, he's my only son-in-law, but he's by far my favorite. And we love Laurel and Kenneth. They're wonderful, wonderful people. They go to church at a little Baptist church in Dalton, and they are productive members of society. Zach and Sadie, we love them too, and they have a fantastic ministry over in Rennes, Georgia. And most of you know Zach, and a lot of you met Sadie there right before they got married. And then there's Shelby. Shelby lives here with us and does all of the things that she does with us at the church at Irwin Hill. And our children are the people they are today because of how we raised them and the love that we showed them and the compassion that we showed them and the interest that we showed them. And so I got to thinking about that, and I got to thinking about the generation that's coming behind us, the generation that is going to take our place. We were playing a game on YouTube the other night, and it's you have to name the song, and you have like 10 seconds. They give you 10 seconds of the song, and you have 3 seconds to name the artist or the song. And of course, I won. But that's a whole nother ball of wax there. But we were playing that game, and the song came on by Roy Acuff. It says, "Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes?" It's an old song from the 70s and 60s and 70s, and talks about who's going to fill the shoes of those superstars from the 50s and 60s. And then you look at country music, and it came up that there were fantastic music stars in the 70s. You had Waylon and Willie and Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash, and all those guys really made a name for themselves in the 70s. And then here comes the 80s with Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson and all of those guys. Then the 90s throw us Kenny Chesney and all these different Faith Hill and Tim McGraw. And it just continues on and on and on. And the generation that is ahead of them longs for and teaches and trains the generation that's coming behind them. So my question to you is, who are you speaking into, and who's coming behind you? Who are you training? Who are you equipping? Who are you empowering, or who are you holding back? See, there's two sides of that coin. You can empower somebody by your words, or you can destroy them by your words. The Bible says that life and death is in the power of the tongue. If you talk harsh to somebody all the time and you degrade them and tell them how bad of a person they are, they're going to eventually begin to believe it. They're going to believe it, and that's how they're going to treat the generation coming behind them, because that's all they know. But if you treat people with an open arm policy, if you love people, if you show kindness, the one thing that I've tried to do, and those people who are watching who have seen me as a substitute teacher should be able to attest to this. The one thing that I have tried to do, with the exception of only one or two kids, is I have tried to show as much love and as much compassion, as much mercy, and as much patience and as much kindness as I possibly can to the kids in the school system today. Why? Because I don't know if they're getting it from mom and dad. I don't know if grandma and grandpa's hugging on them. Now, I'm not hugging on kids at school, but I don't know if they have a positive role model in their life, or if they got somebody who's yelling at them all the time. I don't know if they've got somebody who tells them they can do no wrong, or they got somebody who can tell them they do nothing right. So I try to be a neutral, positive influence in everybody's life. Why? Because somebody was a positive influence in my life. Now, I can sit here and talk to you all night about my parents, but you know my parents. My parents are wonderful people, and they raised us to be wonderful, wonderful adults. My sister, my brother, and myself. And we all turned out pretty good. We all have families. We're all very happy. We're all saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost. We all live for Jesus Christ, and all of our spouses do as well. So we've done pretty good as far as growing up and being responsible adults. But my parents weren't the only influences in my life. I had a 7th and 8th grade science teacher. His name was Ron Kennedy. Spoke into my life tremendously about life, about how to treat people, how to talk to people, how not to bully people. When I was in 6th and 7th grade, I was bullied a lot, but then because I was bullied, it turned out to be a bully. And he spoke to me about not doing that, about not being in people's faces and not treating people with a negative attitude. But he taught me how to treat people the way that I wanted to be treated, and I won a lot of friends that way. I had a fellow by the name of Chuck Allen. He was my basketball coach in 7th and 8th grade. I had to move something there. That bee was going to come over and sting me. He was my basketball coach in 7th and 8th grade, and cross-country coach, track coach there at the middle school, Valley Point Middle School. Spoke into my life about life was not just a sprint, but it was a marathon, that it was a long haul, that the way you treated people would end up helping you or hurting you in the long run. And that spoke volumes into my life, volumes into my life. And then I had high school teachers and college professors who spoke into my life. And then when I became an adult, I had a gentleman by the name of Marty Hackney. Marty Hackney worked with me at WQMT Radio in Dalton, and he spoke into my life about how I treated the people around me and how I treated my wife and my children. I didn't have any at the time, but he taught me how to treat them with respect. And I think about all of those men and all of those women who came before me, who spoke into my life and spoke positive things into my life. Harold Jones and Keith Gunner and fellows like that who spoke into my life in the ministry. Bill Isaacs, Terry Hart, and Greg Baird, Tom Madden, Mike Baker. These guys spoke into my life and taught me how to be a minister, how to love people, how to care for people, how to hold on to people and through a situation, how to work with them through a crisis. And I was on a phone call, on a Zoom call last night with Dr. Mark Rutland. And he talked about coming into and going out of crisis and how the crisis doesn't define you, but how you treat people in and out of that crisis is your character. It's truly all about your character. So who are you speaking into today? I know I say this a lot, but who are you speaking into and who's speaking into you? What are you doing for the generation that is coming up behind you? You may still have kids at home. Are you speaking life into them? Or are you speaking death into them? You may still have children that are attached to you because they're adults. I speak to my children. I speak to two of the three on a regular basis, on a daily basis. I speak to Laurel and Kenneth about every other week. We talk with them, and if they need something, if they need information or something like that, we talk to them every week. But who are you speaking into? Who's affecting? Whose life are you affecting, and how are you affecting it? What about the people that are around you? Do they think you're a positive influence, or do they think you're a negative influence? Do they think you're a great guy, or do they think you're a jerk? Which one is it? You can change it today. Turn it around and treat people the way that you want to be treated. Do unto others as you'd have done unto you. Why? Because your children are the ones that are going to take care of you when you're old. Your children are the ones who are going to be taking care of your grandchildren. Your children are going to be the ones who are preaching and teaching and working in the church after you're gone. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. What are you doing today for the generation coming behind you? This is Pastor Sean coming to you from my front porch in the sunlight, out of the sunlight. It's wonderful to be here with you. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to seeing you Sunday morning at Irwin Hill in the sanctuary, in the drive-in church, or watching us on Facebook and YouTube. God bless you tonight is my prayer.